Welcome to Common Mansplaining, ladies and
Woo-hoo!
gentlemen. Woohoo! Welcome back. Christian, how's it going?
Well, the No Kings protest has worked. We do not have a king here in America.
We still don't
So,
have a king. They did
yeah.
so good. Way to go, Libs.
Well, Burger King had a bad weekend, unfortunately. So,
Burger King. Oh my God. That's funny. You know, I remember, just a side note, but I went into Burger King one time and they didn't even have burgers. Anyway,
yeah.
today we have a juicy one, right? We're going to talk about President Trump, probably the most divisive figure ever to live. Maybe second to Jesus, maybe. So,
Well, Nixon, he's up
yeah,
there. Yeah.
I mean Nixon's there
Political
too.
figures, yes. But yeah.
Yeah, for a political figure. Anyway, so obviously, Trump has had some successes. He's had some failures, just like every other human being on Earth. He is not perfect. Imagine that, right? And so we're going to talk about it. We're going to try to talk about it from as unbiased a standpoint as we can, right? Obviously, we all have these innate biases. Like Christian and I are both relatively conservative, but we're going to try to do this from kind of like a historical perspective. We'll talk about the different measures of success, and instead of like just being like, so if you guys are out there and if you're a Trump fan, right, what I want you to do is kind of take your I love everything Trump does hat off and set it aside for just a few moments. And if you're out there and you hate everything that Trump does, I want you to take that I hate everything Trump, that Trump does hat off and set that aside also, and just kind of try to keep an open mind throughout this discussion. Okay.
Yeah, we'll try to call spin,
Yes.
and hatchet jobs. But what nobody can dispute is that Trump has done a lot of stuff. It's been even his detractors are like,
right. Yeah, I mean that's even one of his maybe his strength, one of his biggest successes is just the sheer amount of activity, especially in the second term. I think he learned that from the first term. He got kind of bound up a little bit with all of the blocks and the Democrats trying to oppose him at every step and legal challenges, and so he's like,
well,
at this time,
it's some self-imposed obstacles too. He would get in the way of his own agenda a lot.
Absolutely, yeah, and he didn't know how to appoint people that were going to be on board and stuff, but he learned a lot. So in the second term, he comes in, he's like, boom, 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 boom. So many rapid fire policies that it's hard to keep up with. So, okay, the first thing I want to talk about is kind of how I measure success, and then Christian may do it in a slightly different way, but there are three different metrics for success that I use. Metric number one is how well a president delivers on the promises they make in the campaign, right? So they say, I'm going to do X or I'm going to achieve X, and then they take steps to do so, right? Another one.
Good metric.
Yes, yeah, right. Very, very common among, now, of course, this can fall prey to people that have bad motives, right? Like Hitler wanted to do a lot of things that were very bad.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but good. Right. So effectiveness. This is a judge of his effectiveness.
Correct. Success metric number two is how well he achieves some historical norms, right? And so, like, it's a random example. We usually try to shoot for about 4 to 5% unemployment in America, roughly. And so, if he achieves that target, he's successfully achieved the historical norm, right? So that would be a measure of success. And then the last one is very, very subjective. It's like how well he's done something that I personally wanted to have happen, right? Like acknowledging my biases for conservatism, acknowledging that Democrats are going to hate some of the things that he accomplishes that I liked, and vice versa, right? So those are three different metrics of success. Did you have any others that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, but let's talk about yours first, right?
Sure.
That'll be fine. I'll add mine at the end.
So, with that in mind, let's start with some things that I think are clear successes where Trump made a campaign promise and then essentially delivered on that promise, right? And one of the first one that comes to mind is he was able to successfully close the border.
Yeah.
And I mean, shut. I mean, now, of course, one caveat I want to give is there's no such thing as like 100% success, right? So people are going to like look at it and say, well, he said he was going to close the border 100%. There were actually like 5,000 people that got through last month, which is a ridiculously small number compared to previous.
We can
But
actually police that. We can police that.
right. And he showed that we can, not only can we do this, we don't need to do it through Congress, although we can, and I hope that we really do address,
The big beautiful
immigration
bill
reform.
help.
Absolutely. So that's one of the big ones. Another one is he had a lot of success with foreign policy ending wars, right? Perhaps not two of the main ones, but he ended a lot of other like little side conflicts that had been going on for a long, long time, right? And again, I realize that there are going to be detractors from this. There are going to be some people who say, well, he only had a certain amount of involvement, or, it really, one guy claims that he was involved and the other side doesn't, or any number
Look,
of.
yeah, I mean, the steps against Iran were bold. There were lots of arguments either way, and it has worked out, at least to this point, 100% in his favor.
Right.
Right. I mean, right. Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis are all much less powerful, right? Without us being involved right now in a direct military engagement with any of them.
Right. Middle East is like, it's quieting down, which is insane for the Middle East, right? Like that's nuts. And he set the bar with the Abraham Accords, of course, in the previous, but now he's just had a lot of success. And note that every time Trump does something, it's going to be like almost always completely different from the way everybody else does it. That's just how his mind works. But you've noticed. I saw this meme the other day where it's like, Obama's like, hey, we should negotiate, and the terrorist is like, no, I just want to blow stuff up, and then Biden's like, hey, I really want to negotiate. He's like, no. The terrorist is like, no, I just want to blow stuff up, and Trump's like, I'm going to blow stuff up, and then the terrorist is like, we should negotiate. So obviously he takes a different tack, and obviously it's going to be a maximalist tack. It's going to be the type where you just perform.
If he wants to negotiate, he wants to do it from a position of strength,
right?
And when it comes from a position of he is willing and maybe even eager to unleash American military dominance. There's a reason why we don't have government health care here. Do you want to see that?
Right.
All right. And so if you don't, you're going to negotiate with Trump with him in a position of strength.
Right. Often at the end, right. You tread softly. Trump's like tread loudly, but carry a big stick. Right?
Yeah. But yeah, he wants the deterrents to be out there, and everybody know the deterrents are out there, and know that he's not timid about using them.
Right. All right. So another big success that I think he's delivered on is energy dominance. Right. He's done a lot. I mean, keep in mind that some of this is still to come. Right. So it's still in a work in progress. But he did a lot of deregulation. He did a lot of like freeing up the engine through which people can like set up the infrastructure, through which the permits can go through which he's authorized the Keystone Pipeline and all that. And so we're rocking and rolling now, and you can already see the benefits, right? You can see gas prices are like rocket low. You can see our production levels are basically the highest they've ever been. I think like 40 some odd % over Biden's numbers, and we're still a net exporter in America and moving up, right? So that's huge compared to the rest of the world. Our rate of growth is greater than theirs.
Yeah, I got gas for $2.42 a gallon today, so right?
It's not quite as good in Florida, unfortunately. Now that for those of you guys who don't know, I moved to Florida, but
North Carolina was good today. So
North Carolina's solid. South Carolina's got some really good prices, and Georgia's, but yeah, Florida's kind of. We're still working on it. But it's still better than it was last year. So thank God for that. And so these are three of his, like, I think, undisputed successes. And not when I say that again, I'm not saying that because I necessarily wanted those to be the case. Some of which I did, though. And I'm not saying that because they're necessarily good historically. I'm saying this specifically because he said I was going to do this, and then he did it, right? And so he's been very, very effective on those three metrics. He's been effective on a
And
lot.
they were different philosophies from the previous administration and from what Kamala would have done.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
yeah. So
Definitely.
and I'd like to get to make a point on the border. The border isn't necessarily closed, right?
Right.
Still legal people, there's trade coming off and people come and go, but we're not being bombarded by illegal crossings, right? It's a manageable number, right? People that are coming in, there are still people coming in and applying for asylum. The numbers are at a manageable level. The number of asylum cases is still going down. But the message has gone out. There's not, people can't game the system, right? It's not as easy. And so you're not having huge caravans of people coming. And
Right.
I think one of his biggest successes on that is not just necessarily closing the border, but now incentivizing millions of illegal aliens to self-deport.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And
That's pretty
so a lot of his other successes, especially when you talk to unemployment, like you talked about reaching historical norms, he's very much to tout that, is because American workers are not having to compete, especially for entry level or manual labor or what they would call low skill jobs with quite as many illegal immigrants.
Right. And he's done a really good job of like getting the other nations that would be part of this like never-ending chain of people into America. He's gotten a good job. He's done a good job of like, negotiating with them, making sure that they close their ports as well, so that it's not just like this constant open spigot, right? So that's another success.
Yeah. And I think that the deterrent for immigrant crime, right? The fact that like you will end up in a Salvadoran prison or in Uganda, right? Has been enough that the illegal immigrants that are here are on their best behavior. And that's all we want, really, too, right? The idea of illegals coming here and setting up criminal enterprises is just like, why do we even have a border, right? If we can't do it. So yeah, I 100% agree with that success. I think that Trump's, when I talk about other sort of making a success, now Trump, he wants to be a disruptor. He wants people he wants to question the status quo. And so just because, yes, Russia has long been our political foe and Putin is a political foe, and he's a thorn in Trump's side, and Trump sees that, right? And has opposed him, has imposed sanctions on Putin many times in his last administration and this one. But he isn't just going to come in and knee-jerk automatically support Zelensky or anybody who's fighting against Russia. They have to make the case to him. Right. And obviously Zelensky came in and did not make that case to him, was really belligerent and entitled in the Oval Office and got some bad advice, I believe, from the Democrat Party on how to handle Trump. And so he's not just taking things just because, this is how we've done it before, or the enemy of my enemy must be my friend. Right, he's evaluating, and I think that that's a measure of a little bit of wisdom of just taking time. He has decided to give Zelensky support, maybe not to the level that Zelensky would want, certainly more than Russia would like him to give Ukraine, and he's had to be strategic. So this is one of my successes too, that I would point to, is one of his long worldviews, even a thing that he'd been talking about ever since NAFTA and Clinton's trade deals that he thought were disastrous, was the strategic importance of having manufacturing in the U.S. Right.
Definitely.
So, and while that's not been achieved yet, we're still very reliant on China and international for things that we are 100% essential to our supply chains. We talked about last time that he's finally getting investors and capital to recognize the strategic importance and invest in it, even though they realize there will be slightly higher prices, right, for rare earths
Right.
that we're gonna try to source from Australia, Argentina,
And what
Ukraine, and
Wyoming now.
Wyoming, right? But having that, we have to have some other way so that China can't have us over a barrel. We
Right.
have to
Right.
have this is important, and um, pure capitalists were like anything that raises my expenses 1 cent, I'm screaming out. But they realized that yes, that they could have their whole supply chain cut and be out of business
Right.
if China, and so and I think this is part of the thing too, like because there was inflation under Biden.
Uh-huh.
Anything that could be projected as affecting prices upward was screamed at by the media
Right.
and the left and anything like that. But we haven't seen inflation like Biden.
Right. Not even
I
close.
think is one of his big economic successes.
Agreed.
Even though there were some prices rises in relation to tariffs, but it hasn't been runaway inflation. It hasn't been
Right.
a triggering effect. It was sort of a one-time spike and
Right.
an adjustment. So that I think I would judge him by that sort of stability, even though in the face of a lot of economic doomsaying. Now,
Yeah.
economic doomsaying,
Um,
maybe we roll our eyes, or people might think like that's just for elites, and as the common man who don't read the Wall Street Journal, we don't care what Paul Krugman says, negatively about the future economy. Right? I've long said that economists are a little bit like NFL announcers in a pregame, that they'll say like, "Oh, this team's going to win," and then when at halftime, when everything's completely different, when the team that they said is going to win is down, they say, "Well,
what?
I said that they needed to get, the rushing yards. They needed to win the turnover battle or something like that." And economists do the same things. They'll say like, "Oh, it's going to be bad," and then 9 months later, everything's great. They said, "Well, I said, so they all start covering there, and so yeah, so Trump, and one of the things that negative economic news has had a bad habit in this country of being a self-fulfilling prophecy,
Yes.
right?
Very much so.
And they know that that's this sort of like pump and dump same, or like you give a lot of negative news and while you have a short position hoping you'll drive down a stock price or something. That it's definitely a George Soros thing, or part of the left, to want the American economy to go down and blame it on Trump, even if it's a temporary thing.
Yeah.
Bill Maher, one of my least favorite moments of his was when he, during the 2020 and before COVID, said
Mhm.
the economy was doing so well, he thought for sure Trump would be reelected, and he was hoping the economy would tank so that
Right.
he would lose the election, right? And that type of wishing ill on the country is something I will never forgive unless
Right.
he
And
begs for repentance, right?
not only that, like some of these like economic heavyweights, like they have such strength of voice in their respective domains that it's like you said, like just them saying it out loud creates some of the, like I remember, Elon Musk could, say, "Oh, we should all buy Dogecoin," and then it would like zip up 50 cents. Like
Yeah.
that's unfortunately the kind of, oomph some of these statements have. And so they go
Yeah.
in and they're like, "Oh, Trump is destabilizing the economy." And then of course the economy is destabilized as a
Yeah,
consequence of
because
like,
statements like that can have a chilling effect on capital,
right,
right? And so people, like, rather than investing, put it in the bank, put their hands in their pockets because they're like, well, this is such a negative thing. But I think, right, well, Trump has shown now we're at the so many of these doom prognostications, which were doing anything with tariffs that had not been done by the previous administrations, was going to be a complete disaster. That is not the economy. I'm not here to say the economy is perfect for everyone, but has largely avoided any type of recession
yep,
or doomsaying, and has consumer confidence is up, right? And with people able to find jobs, unemployment down. I think that's a big part of it. So
Right.
those are some of the things that I would define as success. And
Absolutely.
right,
And so,
and
yeah,
that he hasn't been bogged down by a scandal that has been derailed his agenda as much as people are out there hunting for any scandal,
yep.
right? Right in the face of intense media opposition.
Right, yeah, like everybody's still talking about Epstein files. Like, come on, most they're basically out. Anyway, so yeah, right. He's done a good job of like not getting himself impeached 3 times, and not running into that kind of. Although he still is fighting some legal like resistance at every turn. District court judges trying to put TROs on everything. But so okay, so those are some of Trump's successes by what he said he was going to do, right? I'd also like to talk about some of the failures that Trump promised and did not deliver on, right?
This is fair.
And when I say one of the things I want to preface this by saying is that Trump is kind of a special case, and I know this sounds like I'm giving him more credit than he should get, but he is in a special way. Like political promises are always supposed to be like overpromise, underdeliver. That's just how political promises are. But Trump does it to like a degree that no one, to use Trump's terminology, no one has ever done it like Trump has done. Like literally, he promises way beyond what you could ever possibly. Like, for example, I think I saw somebody in the comments earlier said, hey, I voted for Trump, and he said he was going to end all of these wars day one. And I'm like, come on, day one? Are you like?
He's going to start trying to end them day one.
Right,
Yes,
right.
He's
And so some of this we have to reserve judgment until the full result comes in. And some of this we do have to acknowledge, though, that he's kind of like really, really overpromised and just underdelivered, right? And so I would say
Trump's
the
a
big
little
one.
cocky. I don't know if you've noticed that.
What's that?
He's a little cocky.
Yeah,
He's a little confident in his abilities. Anyway,
just a bit. And so, all right. So one of them I would say is the Russia-Ukraine conflict, right? He obviously said that he was going to end that day one. Whether or not he meant day one is kind of immaterial at this point. It's clear that his rhetoric indicated that he thought that he could manage this easily, and he didn't manage it easily, right? Like it's definitely turned into a more, you know, procrastinated thing. It's turned into a more, elongated problem. Obviously, Zelensky and Putin have no love lost between them, but he should also have probably made more progress by now, I think, to have fulfilled his promise. Another one is, I would say, is Israel and Gaza to a lesser extent, just because he kind of did deliver on it and then got undelivered. But I don't know how to judge the Middle East very well because they've been at war for the last like 8,000 years, and so I don't even know if success there is possible. But he did promise it, right? He did say he was going to do it, but it is more stable than it was. But it's definitely at best only a partial success for him.
well, he had said that they would kick everybody. He would move all the Palestinians out of Gaza, and he'd make it a resort destination for the world, and it would be run by the U.S. So he didn't get what he wanted on there. So.
Right. The best resort too, not just any resort, the best resort ever. Another one I would say that he overpromised on and underdelivered. He claimed that he was going to ultimately like reform all of healthcare and repeal ACA, the Obamacare Act, and basically, everything was going to be fixed magically. Everyone's insurance premium is going to be perfect, basically, and he was going to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Now, he obviously has made some adjustments to the Affordable Care Act, but he certainly hasn't repealed it. And, things are basically just as costly for the most part. I would say he's made some progress on drug pricing, but there's a cost to that too. But he has done at least part of what he said with regard to that, but it's definitely not a fulfilling of his promise, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think he would say his administration would say his big, beautiful bill was a big win.
Yeah.
But again, there's too much fighting over, right? The Democrats, when it comes to healthcare, right? You got Bernie Sanders on fire and want the government to pay for everything. Democrats that want to pay for every illegal immigrant to have 100% healthcare, right? Or even have them be paid hospitals be paid more for illegal immigrant care than for U.S. citizen care. Um, and so there's still things that they have to fight about, right? So
Right.
those things, he still has a chance to get those wins, but those are, I mean, that's why the government is shut down right now, is
Right.
over the philosophy about where money should be spent when it comes to healthcare,
Right.
and we'll see if he can prevail in that or not, and what effect that has. But definitely, I mean, the one thing we haven't talked about that got a lot of press early on in his administration was his work with Doge to fight against corruption and to downsize the government.
Right.
Right. So he had some early success with that, especially with USAID. But what largely was kind of stopped. Now that we're in a government shutdown, he can fire, he can get rid of the Department of Education to a degree that maybe he was being stonewalled before.
Right.
Um, so we'll see if he continues. Right. The intriguing thing with Trump is that's still a priority now that he got a lot of credit, or it was the
True.
story. Now it's not the big story anymore. It's still the sexy thing of, like, if I come into a big meeting or
Right.
a round table of everybody, and I'm like, so I got some Doge updates of
Right.
some government efficiency, and it's just like, yeah, we'll get to that in a minute, and then I never talk to you again, right?
Right.
So is that still are they still looking for fraud and waste? Were changes that they made good enough? Is modernizing the government and bill paying, is that still an initiative? What type of benefits are we having? And um, yeah, and yeah,
Right. 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 Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And yeah, right. Doge is another one where part of it. I give Trump partial leeway here because Elon
mhm,
Musk made a lot of those promises himself,
uh-huh,
right? It wasn't necessarily Trump doing the promising
yeah,
so much. Like Elon Musk was like, "Oh, we're gonna slash everything. We're gonna save trillions of dollars," and it was like a couple billion, like which it's better than nothing, right? It's better than nothing. All right.
yeah. And some
So
of the other successes I think are going to bear out, like removing regulation. That's not something you're going to see, right,
right.
for the comment immediate things, but down the road, it can help expand, capital allocation. We can see a growth in our economy. So that's one of
Yeah.
he would say one of his big successes is deregulating a lot of the onerous
Oh, yeah.
Biden era things, but he's not really screaming about that because we don't really see the benefits quite yet.
Right. Absolutely. All right. So now I want to kind of turn to things that I think were successes in a historical context,
Mm,
right? So, like, I think Trump's biggest success by far is his economy. I think his economy, just start to finish, and it's really weird because he does things that I don't think will work, and then they work, right? And I think the rest of the world is still trying to catch up to that too. It's like you mentioned all the economic heavy hitters that are were originally very anti-Trumpian, and then they came around, like people like Torsten Slok, who is a world famous economist, and Jamie Dimon, who again is just very very heavy hitting in the economic world, and then they're very anti-Trump, and then now all of a sudden they're like, oh man, it's actually not so bad, right? And one of the biggest ones that I'll put a mea culpa out there for is his tariffs, right? Because I still don't like them on principle, but I have to admit that they were not nearly as disastrous as I thought they might be. There was a lot of fear sown by the media saying that they were going to destabilize markets and put everybody out of work and blah 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 blah. And it actually was like very, very modest price increases. And I should note, like, just to expound upon Trump's success in the economy, those price increases that we see at the consumer level aren't even as big as the wage growth that he's delivered on. So if our prices are going up like this and our wages are going up like this, that's a good economy, right? Everybody's
yeah.
happy. We're making more money.
Right.
We might
And
spend
yeah,
a little bit more.
and some prices have dropped or lower than when he took office, right?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
universally, but some. Now, when if I was if Carolyn Levin invited me or you or Con Mansplaining to the White House and I could ask you a question, I would ask about tariffs. Now,
Okay.
now to my own horn, I came down on the side of we should give Trump some leeway to use tariffs as a negotiating tool, right?
Right.
That this was about negotiating trade deals. And so what I would ask him, like, of the countries where we did these high tariffs or whatever, but now we have a negotiated trade deal with them, right? And we have but we have a permanent tariff in place, like 4.9% sort of tariff on goods, and nothing crazy high, but because we have an agreement for those nations. I would ask a couple things. Are those trade deals going to be sent to Congress so that they can be put into law and
Right.
not just be right? I'm fine with him using tariffs as an executive thing for negotiation. But once he's negotiated with that country, that should now be the next step and be codified into law. My other question is on these tariff revenues, I want clarity is when that money comes in, is that going towards immediately right towards our deficit to reduce our borrowing so that we borrow less? Or is this going into a slush fund that he's spending on whatever current priority he feels is important?
Yeah, that's a
Right?
good question.
Right. So those are the things that I'd want more transparency on. Right.
Right.
I'm fine with the revenues. For me, I think it should be with the first. It should all that money should come in since we have a budget sign that
Right.
we're working on. Should just go right towards deficit reduction to
Yeah.
reduce every $1 billion reduce. This is $1 billion we do not need
100.
to borrow.
Absolutely.
Right. And that would
Absolutely.
be a huge human. Right.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
but the tempting is to have this money and spend it on whatever kind of things, lavish this on your political, right? And maybe
Right.
like Argentina, which isn't necessarily a grant, it's swapping money,
Right.
um,
Right.
dollars for now, we're getting dollars back, but it's still like, anyway, I
Yeah.
want some clarity on that. So now, and so I'm okay with him still using high tariffs, right, with China because he's still negotiating with China, and the country he's still negotiating with. But I think once he has a trade deal in place, Congress needs to make that law because that's really what countries or trade partners need too is the legal framework of knowing that where they're going to be. So if the next administration doesn't happen to be of Trump's mind, even if it's JD
Right.
Vance,
Right.
all of a sudden the trade deal means nothing and it's
Right.
off. So I think
Yeah.
that would be the next win for tariffs, and could make them right and could help them be right now. Uncertainty, I think, is the bigger detractor that could weaken the economy or make tariffs a chilling thing.
Right, right. No, yeah, and you're right. And absolutely. And not only that, like the rest of his executive orders too, right? He needs to just start codifying each and he got some of them in the big beautiful bill.
Mhm.
But if that's the thing, because the last thing we want is for him to accomplish all of these things that seemingly everybody voted for, and then they just go away the moment the next person's in
President
office.
Cortez, sorry.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like Newsom gets in office, or oh my gosh, don't. That'd be a nightmare. But yeah, so there's some success. Another big one I thought he had success wise was rebranding the military. Like even by historic norms, him changing the name. I don't know how important it was, but the way that he's treated the culture of the military now as a war fighting machine has significantly increased in recruitment. Has significantly changed the posture and the attitude of every person virtually everybody in the military. I still have a ton of friends from my military days, and they are all like, finally, literally, every single one of them is like, thank God we finally
Yeah,
went back.
it's common sense,
It's
right? It's not a woke lab of social engineering. It's war fighting.
right. Like the whole reason why, I don't need somebody there to comfort me and tell me, get happy feelings and tell me what that my hair looks nice and that I can be any gender I want to be. I need them to protect me and to protect the nation. That's it. That's all I need them for. That's all I pay them for. So that's all they
We
have to
want
do.
them on that wall. We need them on that wall.
Need them on the way. And every single person there now is like saying, thank God we're finally back to the military that I joined for. The military that I originally perceived was going to be the military unit that I was going to be. A lot of these people get in and then over time they're like, man, I can't even coach people up, because if I coach them up, they're going to go to my superior and say that I hurt their feelings and stuff, like literally can't, hold anybody accountable and stuff like that. So this is a
Yeah,
huge,
or officers being held back because they're not woke enough,
right.
right? Rather
It's
than
insane.
whether they're good at war fighting.
And so these are successes that I think are like, those two are really like just historical norm successes. I don't think I would hope that the Democrats could agree. Now, one of the things that they're going to say back, and they commonly do, this is just something that everyone says about every president ever to live. It wasn't him doing it; it was the person before him that did it, right? Like that's the classic, right? Say, like, Trump didn't fix the economy; Biden actually really fixed it, and we just didn't realize it until now, right? So,
Well,
um,
somebody's like, well, they're actually 35-year cycles. This is the first President Bush. Is now the boom that we're in has all been created by.
right, like, and don't get me wrong, I realize that there's going to be some delay in economic procedures, right? I believe, I'm sure that Biden did some things that have affected the economy now, and mostly Trump's having to clean up for most of
Yeah,
those. I mean, like,
inflation.
right.
Yeah.
Right, right, and right. And so a lot of people will point to the fact that Biden had finally, recovered most of inflation by the time that his term had ended. But you got to realize that someone handing off a really slowly recovering inflation can be a huge detriment. So the fact that Trump was able to maintain it and keep it going forward and increase wage growth and GDP growth and like keep unemployment in the target rate and on and on. And I mean, I could spit 30 more stats out that I've written down, but I don't want to bore people with just numbers. But ultimately, I think I would hope that everyone here can admit that Trump runs a relatively historically normed, successful society, economically speaking. Like, as a domestic policy president, he pretty much hits the mark every time.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's good that with consumer confidence, people feel like there's a social structure where they can prosper,
right.
right? And that would be when that we achieve that. I would say the next step then to Trump, and I would ask, like, we can what types of pump priming, what type of Keynesian economics,
Here
deficit
we go.
spending can we cut back on, right? When the economy is doing well,
Right.
that's the time to balance the budget,
True.
right? And we
Very
don't
true.
need to deficit spend anymore.
Right.
So, now one of the
Oh,
things in his list of accomplishments, he talks about, um, and then there's some spend where he talks about getting 3.9 million Americans off food stamps. Well, some of
right.
this is Doge. People talking about fraud. Um, that's going to be spun very differently from the Democrat Party. They're going to be, up in arms that 3.9 million people don't have access to, the food stamps.
They're gonna die.
Because for them ideologically, they want everybody to be on government
Chris,
assistance. They
but
would they
Christian,
would like 100% of people to get things from the government. And
they're gonna
you know,
starve.
yeah, I know.
What will we do? What do they? How will they
Yeah,
get food? Like,
yes.
that's why I got. So for those of you out there that think that, like, nobody has starved in America without a mental health problem in a long time. Like, a long time. So, like, if you have a mental health problem, you definitely need to manage that, and you will probably fail to take advantage of some of the things that America's got. But nobody's just out there on the street like going, "Oh no, I don't have money, I can't eat." They find a way to get food, right? I mean, that's anyway.
If you're in cities, you're right. And I thought of something along the lines of that, but maybe it'll come back to me because I didn't
Sure.
want to interrupt you. Um,
But so I
yeah,
want to talk about
sure,
um, Trump's historically normed failures, right? So this is a
sure.
failure that I think, just no matter how you look at it, throughout history, we've set a certain norm, and Trump is failing across the board. And that is, obviously, his rhetoric is atrocious. And I think I would hope that even people who really, really like Trump could agree there. I would hope that people who really, really love him, like, I get that some people like the fact that he, says whatever's on his mind, and it's like a no filter, it's just like brain mouth thing, right? And that makes him a little bit more relatable to the common man. I get it. But I would hope that people could realize that that is just very unprofessional and unfriendly and taunting and immature. And like I could go on and say like 20 extra words that would make it really, really, it's terrible for diplomacy. It's like very aggressive, you know, and like, and that's the problem. Like I feel like some of the things that he implements with regard to foreign policy would be historic successes, except for the way he does it is accompanied with this terrible rhetoric. It's like, you know, he could very like calmly and patiently withdraw from NATO if he wants to do that. But instead he's like, NATO sucks. You know, it's like,
Well,
all
yeah.
right, great, right. He could very
Well,
calmly and patiently negotiate with Mexico, but or China instead. But instead he's like, China sucks. You know, it's like right between the eyes, he's bull in a China shop all day long.
yeah. This is what people would say. A big part of being a really good diplomat is helping a country save face when you're getting everything that you want. And they're really
Right.
capitulating, but helping them at least save face, right? Especially like Putin. Like, if we're going to essentially defeat Putin or have Putin lose a war, we have to give him some way that he can save face,
Right.
right? But rather than just be like, or sort of dunking on now Trump, he's especially belligerent with elites,
Yes.
and it felt like that they treat him with disrespect and cheer for his downfall, and so that they should deserve the same backways. And he's a person who understands power. It's like,
Yep.
I've got the power, and I'm going to sort of wield that, like with Canada.
Yep.
Like
Right.
Canada was on the verge of voting. Right, Trudeau was such a disaster as a Liberal president. The whole country was swinging right. They were going to vote for a more conservative premier, and Trump makes these very flip comments about Canada becoming the 51st state and things like that, and their national pride sort of sticks in, and they're like,
Yep.
Whether it's bad for us or not, I'm going to vote for essentially another Trudeauite, right?
Right. Right.
And because that guy came in just saying like F Trump in this 51st state thing. Now that guy has come meekly crawling back to the U.S. with all the same issues that Trudeau had.
Right.
Begging for an unbalanced trade deal, which Trump is not willing to accept.
Right. Of
Right.
course. Right.
And he's also, because this guy tried to dunk on Trump so much, he's uninterested in trying to give him a way to save face either.
Right.
He's like, you're going to have to come in the most groveling, right, the most debasing manner possible, and I'm not even going to give you what you want.
Right.
And so maybe that's a lesson to other people too, but it's definitely an unforced error thing where he got in his way. I feel like, yeah, if he had been a little bit more tactful, we could have an agreement with China, with Canada right now.
Yep.
And a more conservative person up there that's not. The liberal policies are just a disaster, and a sort of a sign. Canada and Great Britain, who both elected liberal governments, are sort of a sign of what America would look like if we'd voted for Kamala. Like, it's just, there's no freedom of speech. There's all kinds of unchecked immigration and problems that they're having, and nobody is willing to stand up to it because they're terrified of being called racist or anything like that. Now, another one of Trump's successes that this talks back to one of our episodes, if you want to go look, was him taking on higher education in America.
Yeah.
Right? And
definitely
this also
that.
leads to one of his other successes. He has won so consistently in the courts. Right?
Yeah.
So many times his policy, his executive orders, his things were hit with legal challenges. People being able to find a judge, but time and time again, Trump has won those and found that he is acting legally within the Constitution. He has a Supreme Court at the back end that's not going to be taken in by woke bullcrap, or at least the majority won't be.
Right.
And then being able to hold higher education, say, look, we need you guys to live up to your charter.
Yep.
right? And he did it. It's coercion, and people weren't happy about that. But he did it with carrots. He said, "I'm just withholding these carrots. You get no
Right.
carrots." So he's still using the carrots. You
Yeah, in a
want
way.
these carrots, right?
Right.
So it's still not legally like punishing or controlling them, but he's just withholding carrots.
Right.
But has led to meaningful reform and a chance to maybe not wholly, but to get a little bit more of ideological equilibrium more than we have, especially in far leftist institutions. And I feel like I
Good
chatted with
luck
my
with that.
brother about this. My brother is a Columbia grad, and I
Hmm.
asked him about Columbia. There was an article, maybe I sent it to you as well.
Maybe.
A very leftist
Yeah. Yeah.
person who's a student at Columbia saying that, giving credit how Trump saved Columbia, right? And this is a
Right.
person who's very leftist, right? And how calm it is, how much safer it is to walk around campus and to just
Yep.
function and do stuff that you need to do in a college to get an education. And there's still some Palestinian protesters, but a manageable amount. They're not harassing anybody. They're standing at the gate with some signs or whatever.
Right.
Fine, right? And but he was like, no, this is coercion. This is,
Right.
and what I liken it to, maybe I made this point before, is it's just enforcing the rules. So say it like Monopoly. Say it was
Right.
a game. And for a long time you were playing it with some house rules, right? Putting a bunch of money in free parking or having different things. And you get really used to these really loose house rules.
Yep.
Somebody's gaming it. Well, now somebody comes in and there's a dispute, and they say, well, all right, now we're going to go by official rules, no house rules.
Right. That's
And
it.
it's going to feel like an authoritarian, right? Oh, this is so brutal. You mean I have to stay in jail for 3 turns? Oh my
What?
God, or whatever, right? And it's like, these are the rules of the game. These are the laws we have down. We're
Yep.
going to follow them. And so that sort of reasonable expectation, that sort of reset, I think is healthy and
Yep.
good. And I think is while higher education is still fighting and chomping at this bit,
Sure.
these carrots are very sweet. They want the carrots,
Of course.
which why I think Trump will ultimately prevail because he's on very solid ground, and I think what he's asking for is common sense.
Yeah, and it's he does that a lot actually. He does that with the tariffs too, right? Everybody's so used to getting these handouts from America, and he's like, "Yeah, you don't really need those anymore." And
Yep.
maybe you needed them 50 years ago, maybe. And so right, so there's a lot of that where he just goes back to phase one. Everything's even again. Everyone's like on a trade parity now.
Let's go by the rules. Let's go by the
Right?
rules.
Seems simple enough. All right. I want to talk about some of the times where Trump has what I would call a success, but at a cost that I would think too dear.
Yes.
Okay, so because
Constitutional crises. Yeah.
constitutional crisis, so or not even necessarily constitutional, but sometimes he violates a norm that I think we
Yeah.
just can't violate, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And I think my biggest example, of course, would be deploying National Guard to everywhere.
Mhm.
Now, I don't deny that it will probably have the effect that he hopes to have, which is to chill crime, right? I get it. And I mean, like, I think the Gestapo had the effect they wanted to have too, right? There's a reason why that you don't need the federal government to get involved in this sort of thing, right? And usually, here's what I'll grant, like usually he doesn't have people don't have governors and mayors that are just belligerently opposed to law enforcement
Yeah.
doing their jobs, right? So this is kind of like an odd situation, but still, as you know, Trump is a maximalist, and he always goes straight to the harshest possible answer to a thing, right? The least tactful, the most oomph to it, right? The most power, the most force, and I feel like Trump skipped like 7 levels where he could have found a more tactful approach, a more like measured approach, and maybe not made quite so many enemies, on the way in. I mean, I don't deny that broken window policing works, but it's like, at what cost? At what cost? What do you
Right.
think?
So for me, I feel like That's like when people game the system, when things go
Mhm.
too far. It's like, okay, we have a house rule, or we're letting things go, but then people see an opportunity and they start exploiting that
Right.
loophole. Then you say, all right, we can't have that anymore because you're not taking it in good faith. You're not using that in good faith, right? You're now
Okay.
exploiting it, and we have to have a reset back to strictness. All right, we're going to follow the law, right? We're going to say, look, you get on the subway without paying a fare, right? We're actually going to clamp down on that, right?
Okay.
Now, when you get and you want to instill the sense like the norm is to obey the law, right?
Sure.
When you feel like the law norm is to break the law, you have to reset back to right. There will be consequences there, right? The norm is to keep the law. Then once everybody's doing that, then you can start being easy. You can start liberalizing a little bit. But when in so many aspects under the liberals, right, they wouldn't deport anyone, right? They started doing cashless bonds, like career, lifetime, multiple offending felons were just revolving door out of jails, right? That there was the and people recognized this and were exploiting it.
Sure.
And right. And so once we get so it's gonna feel authoritarian. Now
Yeah, but
the National Guard, all right. I want to address that initially.
yeah.
I feel like the National Guard in DC
Hmm.
um, didn't actually do law enforcement,
Sure. They just
right?
stood there
In
for the
fact,
most part.
in
They did a little bit, but yeah.
they did some cleanup. They helped get some the homeless out of the permanent encampments, things like that.
Sure.
But mainly they were for show, right? In fact, people were claiming like how expensive it is to have these people picking up garbage and stuff like that. But they were out where people could see them. They're National Guard troops, and it set an
Right.
expectation that is still and even with them off the streets, people know if this lawlessness comes back, that Trump will bring them back. If you want to live without National Guards, the norm has to be no carjackings. If you start as kids wanting to carjack people, you're going to very quickly see more National Guard troops back in DC. And so
Mm.
people have to see that correlations. If you don't like National Guards in DC, stop carjacking people, right? And right, so that sort
Or
of
go to
consequence. Now,
another city.
in California and in Chicago, right, their opposition, it's clearly been for show. And I think these are governors who are trying to raise their political profile because they want to run for president.
Mm.
The National Guard that are not enforcing the law, they're just protecting ICE, which should not be under attack. They're making big shows about border or ICE enforcement and helping do this, but they're not actually arresting anybody. And the National Guard, yeah, we're not actually firing on or enforcing any laws. So it's close to the line, right? And Judy had the same issue. She didn't like how close he was with flirting
But
with the line.
it's
But he hadn't gone over that constitutional line of
just so I'm
using
clear.
troops against American citizens yet.
Just so I'm clear, it's not the fact that I feel like it's over the line, right?
Yeah.
And I admit that it might be just like fractionally under it, but it's just the fact that there are like 7 different things that he could have done first. That's my problem, right? My problem isn't that he's
Yeah.
doing something that's technically, it might technically be legal. It might even not, right? But he seems to be winning all of his court cases. I think I think Washington is a slam dunk. I mean, like DC, obviously, it's a federal zone anyway. But he seems to be winning in Portland. He's probably going to win in Chicago. My point is not that he shouldn't be able to do it. Like, I feel like it's probably something that should be in the threshold of things that a president can do if absolutely necessary. But it's not absolutely necessary, right? Like, I feel like there
I
are
think there's a lot
4
of
other
Hawthorne
levels.
effect. Right. I give him a lot of credit on the crime breakdown because I think people in law enforcement, just as in any career, can get kind of complacent in
Yeah.
sort of job and maybe that. And rather the DC police, like people talked about in DC, where they would report crimes, they got mugged or the car got broken into, and they would call DC police, and the DC police like wouldn't do anything about it. And when Trump took over and like basically took over the police chief's jobs and stuff, now all these guys start doing their job really zealously,
Of
right?
course.
And sort of kicks them back into it. And it's like, okay, I don't need to run. You know, that's all I want from you, right? That's all. He's like, just do your job well, and I don't need to come in and take over. And he so just going into Memphis, going into these places for a little time, kind of jumpstarts the locals into, oh crap, I will have federal oversight because I'm a failing justice system. Kind of like a failing school will have state will come in and take over that school and then makes everybody work harder again. We'll see whether, I feel like.
I mean, you don't think there was anything else he could have done between level 1 and level 6 or whatever? You don't think that he could have
No, I'm not
sent in a
saying that.
liaison?
I'm not saying that. Right?
Okay.
He definitely escalated. He definitely he trumped everybody, and he escalated, right? And I think it's because the situations both had antagonistic Democratic leadership.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Of course. Now,
that if he felt like that there was cooperative Republican leadership, he would talk to them about mitigating steps. But with Karen Bass, right, with mayors, governors actively sort of encouraging violence and stoking these type of things, I think his belligerence, right, or you talked about, stoked, and is like, look, and I feel like right now, obviously, I don't live in DC, California, or Chicago, so I can't speak to the common man's feelings in those cities. Other than reports that I found from people have all been positive.
Yeah, I'm gonna counter that. The problem is if you see it, that's one of those spin things on both sides. Like I guarantee you, everybody on the left found all negative ones, and everybody on the right found all positive ones, and then just put them on the thing. But I think largely, I mean, you can look up some of the stats. Largely, the polls show that it was a welcome. Roughly, it was like maybe a 55-45 issue, but you're going to run it. But I just can't. Anyway, my point is that I really wish that Trump would stop flirting with the borders because he doesn't always have to. He doesn't always have to go to level 9 right away. He could send a liaison in and say, look, he could use it as a campaign thing. He'd be like, look how much we've done in Memphis where the governor wants the National Guard there and I didn't have to call him in. And Chicago still sucks. Look, like he could use that to just like sweep the midterms, probably put Pritzker out of, a job. I don't know why he doesn't take these more measured steps. That's my only thing. Like I maybe he'll achieve success, maybe. And I hope he does. I really do. I'm still rooting for him, right? Like I'm still, even if he does the wrong thing or does the things in a way that I'm not happy with, like shooting Venezuelan boats out of, like blowing them out of the water. I'm not happy with that approach. I'm still rooting for the result, but I'm not happy with the approach. I wish he would, arrest him.
All right. I have one last negative I'd like to talk about Trump.
Sure.
I feel like his prosecutions of James Comey, Letitia James, John Bolton have been politically motivated in a naked way that I don't like the precedent of it. I don't think they'll hold up. Now, Letitia James, maybe. Every case is different. Sure. But clearly just retribution for how they treated him. I'm not a fan of any of the people that were charged, but I felt like it was unpresidential and should have been a very low priority. Not something you would do in the first year. While
get around to it. And I mean, he should. I mean, obviously, we would hope that. So, to be fair, Letitia James made her own bed, but that being said, it should not have. Yeah, it shouldn't have headed in that direction. Obviously, Trump is a very egocentric guy, and obviously, anytime there's an affront to his persona, he's gonna get in that very defensive mode and fight back and try to put that person behind bars or whatever. And I will say,
Letitia James, with that case completely being thrown out, as political garbage. I understand he should have just taken that win.
Yeah.
So again,
Now, I will say this. Now, I don't, because I'll be honest, I haven't followed all of those cases as deeply
sure.
as, like, I can't speak intelligently on it. I just know, like, little couple things that I've heard. But Letitia James sounds like she's probably guilty of literally the exact same thing that she accused Trump of, which is ironic, to say the least. Comey's probably guilty too. Been being investigated for a long time, right? Like, but that being said, like, I wish there was a way. Obviously, each case is separate. I wish there was a way to kind of like find the measured approach again and figure out which ones are really like you can safely extricate yourself from the political motivation, and which ones like really just need to happen anyway. Obviously, like looking at Trump's cases, like some of them he probably was guilty on, some of them he was probably innocent on. That's just law of numbers. Now, neither side will admit that, right? Like the left is always like all 75 cases or whatever against Trump were 100% guilty. And the right's like, no, Trump didn't do anything wrong. And I'm like, come on, that's just not reasonable. Like I can very easily believe that he slept with a porn star. Very easily. Right?
Yeah.
Like and tried to pay her off. That's not like rocket science to me, but whatever. But but I think the fact that he was charged so many different times for so many different stupid things should be evidence that at least some of them was BS. Right? That should be it. And yet Letitia James only has like one major charge against her. That's probably not BS, right? We still do need to charge the people who commit crimes, right?
Elites
Like,
have to have consequences. Anyway, we'll see.
yeah,
But for me, it wasn't something I felt like what
I
was
agree.
something that could distract from his agenda because he's winning and
Yeah,
keep the economy going and other these things are so
I agree.
important and yeah.
But anyway, I think we're about out of time. You got any closing thoughts?
I still well, I was never a never Trumper, but
Right.
Trump has won me, and I am more a fan of him now than when I voted for him in
Okay.
2024. I feel like he is a transformational president and will go down in history as in a positive way. Um, and right that, but he's not. Yeah, for all of his talents, he has these flaws, and I hope they're not tragic flaws that undermine his presidency at this point. And I credit his chief of staff and those who are close to him to reining those in, reining his self-destructive tendencies, so that he can be effective. And obviously, I'm praying for America, right? And I want our leaders. I want Trump to succeed because America succeeds in that. And
Yep.
but he's definitely putting in the work, and I appreciate that.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, I've still got mixed reviews. For most of you guys that watch the channel, you know that I was never really a Trump fan. But what I really hope that people take away from this episode is that you don't have to be a fan of Trump to acknowledge his successes. And even if you are a fan of Trump, you should be able to acknowledge his failures. One thing I tell everybody is like, look, no matter how good or how bad a president is, every single person in America should be able to tell me three things they really liked about him. And sorry, I got a call. Three things they really liked about him and three things they really hate about him, right? Like they should still be able to find the good and the bad, no matter how polarizing or how divisive or how crazy a guy is. You should be able to find things that you can say, well, I have to say he did this really well. He executed that right. He implemented exactly what he said he was going to do, or something, right? You should be able to find that. And so even if you guys hate Trump, and it seems to be a lot of people that don't like Trump in the comments today, but we really appreciate you watching. I just hope that you take away from this that even though you may not like him, there are some things that you should be able to acknowledge are just historically successful or are exactly what he said he was going to do and campaigned on and won the popular vote on, right? Like if people want that to happen and he campaigned on it and he wins the popular vote, that's not a king, that's democracy, right? So if you go out protesting that, you're not protesting regality, you're not protesting royalty, you're protesting democracy. So that's just my take on it. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. You got one more thing?
I got one more thing. At least we can all agree on the big, beautiful ballroom.
Big, beautiful. Oh my gosh. You guys are great. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Common Mansplaining.
Keep it coming.
Keep it coming.